Hello Year 12. Today we're going to talk about another core text for the Craft of Writing module. So a text that you have to study and one that you will probably be referencing in your upcoming creative writing assessment, or at least in the reflection. The poet today is Luka lesson. He is a Greek Australian performance poet. So that means that his poetry is designed to be watched and heard rather than read off a page. That's why I've put the YouTube link for his poem on the slide. It is called May Your Pen Grace the Page. I've also just put on that slide a photo of what he looks like. It's from his website. The link is down the bottom and I encourage you to have a look at it when you have time. Okay, Year 12, hopefully you have gone and watched the video of Luka Lesson performing his poem May Your Pen Grace the Page. Now what I'm going to do is go through the poem with you and annotate some literary techniques, the same as we would do for any kind of poem. This is to get some analysis going and to understand which techniques are common between all forms of poetry, so written or spoken. After that, I would encourage you to rewatch the video and add some notes about changes in tone, volume, or body movements, because he performs his poem. He doesn't just stand there, and that's a really important distinction to make. Given that you've already watched Lesson perform his poem, I'm not going to read through the whole thing, nor am I going to use this time to introduce any new techniques. We're going to focus on the techniques that we already know, that we're already familiar with, so that when we come to analysis, you can do the interpretation side of it yourself. On the left-hand side, you can see some of those techniques that we're already familiar with. Repetition is used to emphasize or highlight an important point. In this case, it's the second person you or your, which is repeated a number of times. This is done to engage the responder and to make them think about their creative process. On the right, I've just got a quick note about the double meaning of grey matter. It's what your brain is made of, but it also could be used to describe writing that has no creativity or colour. You can see that I've split this up into what looks like stanzas, but there actually aren't any in this poem. I've just split it up to see what fits on each slide. So please don't assume that the poet, when he's performing it, starts and stops like this. That is not the case, and you'll already know that if you've watched the video. So to continue, we've got a lot of variation in sentence lengths. So we start with ignoring your calling and calling you boring is boring. So the emphasis here is on the shorter sentences. We've got another metaphor. You're basically stewing. So the idea that your brain is stewing things, preparing ideas to be ready for later. Rhyme and repetition. No space, no place, face. Okay. Then we have personification. So space or wasting time is stealing your brain here, right? So your brain, it is stealing, and there will be no change to you, and there'll never be any change to that stealing. So the idea that if you don't sit down and think about things and you don't put in the work as a creator, as a creative person, and as someone with their own mind to work on this, that things will never change. The alliteration and the metaphor down the bottom are going to be continued on the next one. This metaphor or imagery about the body extending into writing, or writing being an extension of the body, continues here. So pass a rush of blood till your arteries blast, and let the blood rush to your arm and let your artistry start. It repeats and does a big circle back to the start with May Your Pen, and introduces this idea of yin and yang. So the idea that you have to have two sides, or a duality to life and to creativity. Got some colloquial language, the use of contractions, so cause instead of because, and a rhetorical question. And if we can't make our points, then what's the point of it all? Just to quickly focus on the first two lines of this slide. May the lead in your lead pencil lead you astray. We spell it L-E-A-D because we've made leaders this way. So you've got personification. Obviously, pencils can't actually take you anywhere physical, but the idea here being that they can creatively take you to places. There is a pun or a bit of a play on words on the two pronunciations of lead or lead. Personification is a really key technique in this poem, and it continues across this slide. So the pencil becomes Lesson's companion. So Lesson, when he is writing, feels so close to the pencil or her that it says, my pencil man, she gets to me, she comes to me and comforts me and takes me out to lunch, you see. Then we've got a more intimate relationship developing. So there's an idiom there where the words mean more than they say, and they start referring to some more intimacy. Getting to the end of the poem now, we continue with the personification and the puns. It's my life as I desire to be. It's only right that she's my wife to be. So again, another play on words that creates humor, engages the audience. We've got a double entendre or double meaning of sheets. So we make love between the sheets. referring to both sheets in a bed and sheets of paper. The repetition at the end comes back to the start, so it's a bit of a circular structure, and he kind of implores the need for imagination and creativity, hoping that people mean what they say and say what they mean when they write, and that writing becomes a sacred act. So here he says, may writing your lines be the way that you pray. So year 12, we've set 6 response questions to this poem. They should ideally all be teal responses, so not forgetting that we have a clear structure to follow and that then we branch out from that structure. So your teal, your topic sentence, your example, your explanation, and your link are the base. And if you would like to write more or creatively work with that structure, you are most welcome to. The first question I'm going to focus on because I've done an example of that on the next slide for you. But make sure you go through each of the questions, check that you understand what all of the words mean, particularly the directive words, so things like explain, identify. Remember in question 5 and question 1, how means that you need to refer to techniques. I'm going to run you through now quite a basic example to how you could answer question 1. The question is, how does lesson gain and keep your attention as the responder? Remember, the correct term in this response is responder. You're not a reader because it's a performance poetry focus, so the performance is still the key here. If you look at my structure, I've separated it into the 4 basic teal elements, but I want to keep in mind that this is the minimum that we require of you, not a maximum, and that you can be creative with your structure. To begin, I've said, lessons may your pen grace the page uses a variety of figurative language techniques such as imperative language and personification to engage responders. So I've made it clear what my focus is, engagement, and how I'm going to answer the question, imperative language and personification. Then I go to my first example. Lessons directions to get up, step up, never let up, use high modality and imperative language to attempt to force a response from readers. If you can see on the right there, I've just made a note that my quotes are integrated. So rather than saying, an example of this in the poem is, and having your quotes stick out like a sore thumb, you want to, as best as possible, to integrate them or put them in to your other sentences. I've done it again in the green sentence where it says, similarly, personification of his pencil is used in, she comes to me and comforts me. This allows for a much clearer flow and a less stagnated response. To tie it all together at the end, I've said this personification creates another character out of the pencil, which combined with the imperative language attempts to force responders' engagement with their own creative pursuits. Lastly, just some reminders while you're answering the questions. Remember, the minimum structure is the teal. Your quotes should be integrated, not stick out, and evidence is always needed to back up your arguments. Thanks, Year 12. Good luck.